Although there is still a long way to go in the future of feminism, there has been a lot of progress made during the period of women's suffrage. This has given women in America many more rights and responsibilities that they did not have before.
There were several groups for and against suffrage and the fight for women's rights. One of the main groups against suffrage was the cult of domesticity, which believed that a woman's place is in the home, not in the workforce. One example of an opinion that could be found in the majority of people in the cult of domesticity is that of Agnes E. Meyer, the author of Women Aren't Men, which says, "Women have many careers but only one vocation, motherhood. As a result, their most successful careers are motherhood substitutes, such as teaching, nursing, social work, as well as medical, psychiatric, and other scientific professions that protect the child and the family." While on the other hand, there were many groups supporting women's rights, such as the Women's Christian Temperance Union of Queensland, where you could find opinions like Sojourner Truths, a feminist and abolitionist, who said in her Ain't I a Woman speech, "Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well." Along with these groups, there were many protesters for and against feminism. Many of these feminist protesters would get arrested for their protests or acts to defy the patriarchy. One woman, Emma Goldman, was arrested at least 16 times from 1893 to 1919. Goldman arranged many public speeches and protests to fight for women's rights, and became infamous because of these speeches. Another woman, Alice Paul, was the leader of the National Women's Party. In the early 20th century, the National Women's Party pushed to get the vote in many unorthodox ways. During World War I, Paul and other feminists chained themselves to the White House fence in protest and were arrested. They started a hunger strike because of their imprisonment and had to be force-fed. Many of these feminists also protested against World War I because they were afraid that concentrating on the war would take publicity away from suffrage and negatively impact women's rights. But actually, quite the opposite happened. Many people associate World War II with women joining the workforce, but women had already been working for many years before that. Women started off working in low-paying jobs with little physical work needed, such as working as a domestic servant, in factories that produced things such as clothing, as seamstresses, or in the lower levels of education. Even though the women were able to get jobs, most of the time married women in the workforce could not have control over their salary. This right to work also came with many responsibilities, such as making sure that the family's children are still taken care of and ensuring that the household was still clean and in order. Many more women started to work when World War I started, and it became more obvious that women could handle jobs outside of domestic servitude and exceed the expectations of many while in those careers. World War I had a large impact on feminism, from things like jobs and salaries to things like fashion for women. Even though many feminists stopped working for equality to focus on helping win the war, women still gained much more freedom than they had before. One very significant impact is that when men were drafted into the Army in 1916, more women became employed in many different types of work. Some women were even employed in the military, mostly in jobs like secretary work, working in the kitchens, storekeeping, nursing, manufacturing supplies for the military, mainly in munition factories, and some even became drivers of a variety of military vehicles. Along with these new job opportunities, their wages increased. Although once the war ended, many women were laid off so that men could have their jobs back. Because of this, the idea that a woman's place is in the home became popular again. But the end of the war did have many positive effects. After the war, it became acceptable for women to wear shorter skirts or pants, for women to smoke, for women to wear makeup, to have more freedom sexually, and to be seen with men in public without a chaperone. All of the smaller advances for feminism contributed greatly to women gaining the right to vote. The groups that worked towards equality for women are one of the greatest influences, along with World War I, which helped introduce women to the workforce. Susan B. Anthony was a very important historical figure in relation to feminism. She, along with other feminists, helped to promote prohibition. Anthony believed that drinking alcohol was a sin because of the negative impacts it had on the wives and children of the men who drank too much. Because of this belief, she fought for women to be able to own property, which would later enable them to vote. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was another prominent figure in feminism. Stanton fought for marriage and divorce rights for women for similar reasons. She also fought for education rights, political equality, and for women's clothing to be less restrictive. Many other women fought for these rights, which all resulted in women gaining the right to vote. This right caused many other feminist movements and influenced women to start taking birth control and gain more sexual freedom. Birth control played a significant part in women gaining more rights. One important advocate of women being able to use birth control was Emma Goldman, who served as a nurse and midwife for poor families. Goldman spoke many times about the right of the child not to be born, and would smuggle contraceptives due to her experience with mothers who were unable to support the children that they already had, so would have self-inflicted abortions to protect their families. Goldman was also an inspiration to Margaret Sanger, who in 1916 opened her own birth control clinic, but was arrested 10 days afterwards, and the clinic was shut down. Many other feminists believed that family planning was extremely important, especially to families that struggle financially.
Suffrage has had a huge impact on feminism in many different ways. It has accomplished things from seemingly small advances like fashion choices for women, to breakthroughs like giving women the right to vote. But even though much progress has been made, there are still many more changes needed for women to be widely considered men's equals.
Once too often, you're gonna step out once too often. I'm getting mighty sick and tired of holding a torch for you. So just be careful, brother, I too can find another. Remember, anything that you do, I can do too. Once too often, I'll get to go by once too often, and then you'll have to change your tune and sing in a different key. That line that you've been using will cease to be amusing. It's gonna boomerang when you come looking for me. You're a wizard when it comes to crying, a master in the art of alibying. Go on and do your tall and fancy lying, baby, but you will say you're sorry once too often. You're gonna weep, but